Right, so Keir Starmer has decided in a frankly ridiculous article in The Guardian, departure from running to Rupert Murdoch for a change, so let's at least give him that he cannot win power by spending money. The Labour is unelectable, it seems, if he chooses to actually spend public money, our money, on the things that need fixing and would grow the economy, because apparently that's not how economics works, you see. And he really does need to keep doing things just like the Tories have been doing, because evidently he thinks they're right. And that is how things must be done, despite the fact nothing has worked or run properly for years. He's a liar and a fool, frankly, if he truly believes that. He's, well, possibly the latter is definitely the former, but let's be honest, he has his handlers. And everything that pours out of his mouth has come straight from the Tony Blair Institute, Blair himself even. Or worse, Peter Mandelson, a man inexplicably still massively influential and highly regarded amongst Starmer's inner circle, something which should put anyone still saying, why is he there? He was mates with Jeffrey Epstein, and send them and their votes elsewhere. So what is Starmer's answer then? Or rather the one he's delivered like a puppet on a string? He's prioritising economic growth, wealth creation, and radical reform of public services. This is what he is saying. 3 statements that after 13 years of Tory-inflicted pain and misery should be ringing alarm bells. These aren't 3 priorities. These are 3 excuses. 3 statements to say, I'm on the side of the privateers, I'm on the side of the rich, and I'm on the side of pro-privatisation interests, and I won't reverse a single bit of it. I'm going to lie through my teeth and say it's about the fact that Tories have killed off growth, and we cannot afford to do any of these things anymore. Yet to make people think that I'm being economically prudent, I'll just say fiscal rules every 5 minutes, because that makes everything sound credible again, doesn't it? Oh, and the left need to get with it and get behind me because I'm the only show in town, he says. Made me laugh, that bit, as if the left are still planning on voting for him in any way, shape or form. But therein lies the arrogance behind all of this. Mandelson's still clearly playing the tune that we can go full Tory because the left have nowhere else to go. We do. We found other places to go. And across the country, certainly at local levels, Labour has found itself punished where better alternatives are found. The Greens doing incredibly well at their expense around the country, as they did during the local elections. And Labour just lost one of its safest council seats in the country to an independent former Labour member who resigned from the party in disgust because of Starmer. But that warrants covering in another video. Something else that warrants covering in another video is Metro Mayor Jamie Driscoll resigning from the Labour Party and now choosing to run as North of Tyne Mayor independently. So let's see how he gets on up there. Let's face it, Labour members wanted him and Starmer denied him them. So let's try and dig into what Starmer's getting at here anyway. Let's get back to this in his 3 excuses. He really ought to advertise them as such, excuses. He's made enough pledges and promises that he's broken. He ought to start fessing up as he intends to go on, really. Excuses, lies. Well, reform of public services. Let's work backwards. We'll start with this one. We've heard that word enough with the Tories in charge, haven't we? Most notably to do with the NHS. And it's never been a good thing. In fact, the Tories only ever continued on what Blair started, is NHS reforms, piling on debt in the NHS in the form of PFIs, ball and chains around the necks of healthcare trusts, likely taking until the 2050s to clear them. Instead of reversing the privatisation that was beginning to come in before him, Blair ramped it up and kept it going. Do you think Starmer will be any different? Blair on steroids as he is? Because if you do, check the Every Doctor website to see how many Labour MPs, never mind the Tory ones, you expected of them taking donations from private healthcare interests, but not least from Labour's side of things, Starmer himself, as well as his health minion Wes Streeting, and more. If you're taking their money, you are being bought. Policy is being purchased, and it is going to get worse. Starmer was asked about renationalisation of our steel industry at Unite Policy Conference. He failed to give an answer to that too. Radical reform is code word for not putting any more money in right-winger nasty party thinking. Public services are a drain on economic growth, so cannot have investment. It's what the Tories tell us now. Despite having the highest tax rate currently since World War II, giving them the most room to spend, a country like ours, which literally prints its own money and can never run out of money, has a funny habit of implying we never have enough, doesn't it? It is a con, it is a lie. It's all to make you think national spending is like household finances. When they can print money and we can't, the idea of comparing the two is just silly, but they get away with it as their pals in the media aid and abet. It's also false economy if you take Starmer's claims over economic growth. People get sick. If they can't get the help they need, they'll be sicker for longer, unable to work. That's not economically productive. If we need to constantly pay for expensive agency staff to cover vacancies we can never seem to fill, that is costing the public purse more. Again, economically stupid. So train more and bring back from overseas those we've lost, which has also been false economy. We need steel. It's been ruined through privatisation. We need it for defence, amongst other industries. So it's a question of state security that we have control of this. But no, the economy apparently comes before security these days as well. No renationalisation on the cards anywhere. And you can point to education or energy or water, and you can make similar arguments for why it is economically incompetent to take these back into public hands, as they would cost us more for a worse service and the damage they do to industry and economic growth. But again, there's that arrogance and the fact Starmer is being worn like a glove puppet that shows it's a Tory austerity 2.0 on the cards with him in charge. Take wealth creation now, another one of his excuses. How is he going to do that, and for whom? He wants to build GB Energy, let's not forget, a new energy producer and distributor, but crucially not a supplier to us. It'll supply energy to the same suppliers that have been scalping us over the past year or so, so evidently the wealth is going to them. Starmer is, of course, courting the donors heavily. Rachel Reeves recently put out a call to the wealthy elite to come over and join her for breakfast. Tory donors specifically she's wooing. One that said they'd had such an invite was a Bank of England economist and was open to conversations with her. Another has claimed to have already met with her. If Labour are attempting to poach donors from the Tories, do you really think they're voting for anything different to what we have today? If they are the ones handing over the cash to Labour now, who is the wealth creation going to be for under Starmer, do you reckon? It's not going to be for us, is it? Any different than it is now? Starmer's already ruled out a wealth tax as well, and little wonder why, when instead of that wealth being taxed, going into the economy to enable him to spend more on the things we need him to, he'd prefer it to go into Labour Party coffers instead, just like the Tories. You have to remember that under his predecessor, Jeremy Corbyn, Labour paid off all of its historic debts and ended up, by the end of his run, more than £13 million in the black. How? By enthusing and inspiring people and growing the party membership, not reliant on one single wealthy donor. Not only has Starmer blown all of that money to the point we've seen 4 rounds of redundancies amongst Labour staff under him, but having been part of Corbyn's shadow team, he saw how Corbyn did this for the Labour Party. And even though he stood on a platform of continuity Corbyn policy when he stood for Labour leader, knowing how to keep the party wealth, he instead acted to purge as much of that membership as possible, actually preferring the donor route, the route which piled so much debt on the party in the first place. Not only is he a liar in everything he stands for, but he truly is an economic idiot too. Though I would argue it was never about the good of the country and all about what is good for him. He has, after all, seen how rich Tony Blair has become. If you're going down the same road he did, how can his motivation be seen as any different? Then there's that first point about economic growth I need to return to, and it's growth through spending not one extra penny, still singing from the same hymn sheet as the Tories. Housing was recently a subject of ridicule for Labour, the dream of home ownership once more brought up, despite people having no extra money in their pockets, wealth inequality rising, income stagnating, and fewer people able to save to ever be able to afford a mortgage. Even when the BBC raised the prospect of building more social housing, Labour just ignored it, both Rachel Reeves a week ago and Starmer just this weekend gone. In fact, this was just the tip of the iceberg where Starmer's idea for economic growth is concerned, since he seems set to build it off the backs of families and the poorest, just as the Tories have been trying and failing to do. And nothing sums that up more than the news that the 2-child limit on benefits is to remain. In 2020, Starmer tweeted out, because there's always a tweet, there's always a history, there's always a receipt, we must scrap the inhuman work capability assessments and private provision of disability sanctions, e.g. ATOS, scrap punitive sanctions, the 2-child benefit limit, and the benefits cap. He's gone back on everything in that tweet. Now, it's not even just left-wingers like me screaming about it now, though. Even Starmer's own factional types are up in arms about this one, because it is just abject cruelty. The General Secretary of the Fabian Society, for heaven's sake, tweeted out just this morning saying, I'm not going to pretend I'm happy with Labour's new line on the 2-child limit. It is a vicious policy that seeds child deprivation and a nasty dog whistle. What sort of families have 3+ children in modern Britain? Reversing it is fairly cheap and lasers in on hardship. He's not wrong. I can't disagree with this guy. Neither is Labour left-wing MP Mick Whitley, who tweeted out, I was elected on a platform committed to scrapping the 2-child limit, which our Shadow Work and Pension Secretary recently correctly described as heinous. This is the wrong call. Absolutely right, though. Though that Work and Pensions Secretary will go along with whatever Starmer says, alas. And Whitley, of course, has been ousted from his seat conveniently, boundary changes, of course, for a Labour right-winger to instead stay on. Another wrong decision. It is also notable that the areas that will be hardest hit will be, according to the End of Child Poverty Coalition, the red wall seats Starmer's trying to win back from the Tories. Less, come back to us, more, we're punishing you for deserting us. You grow an economy from the bottom up. You put more money in ordinary people's pockets. They spend it. That's economic activity. That grows an economy. You focus on wealth creation instead. It's only the wealthy that benefit, as the cozying up to Tory donors shows their intent. They get more. It goes offshore, does nothing, doesn't work, doesn't grow the economy. We have two Tory parties now. There's no escaping that notion. You are deluding yourself if you think otherwise. Starmer lied to get the Labour leadership. He's lied about everything he stood for, yet now, with a year to go until the general election, roughly speaking, and with poll leads the Tories look very unlikely to overcome, he can be confident enough to start to set out his true intentions, which basically amount to nothing will change. So if you want the Tories out, there's no point voting another one in. And if you want to change for this country, you need to follow the same logic. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the video useful. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content if you did. Meanwhile, here's another video recommendation for you where, despite pledging to help people get on the housing ladder, Rachel Reeves came out to bat for buy-to-let landlords the other day. So again, whose side are they on? And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.